Yeah, I'm gonna leave town tomorrow.
Do you?
Yeah, just over Tri-Cities.
No.
Yeah. And so,
You guys ever get calendar invites and then don't say the date or time? Nothing, it's just.
However, but there's no day or time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see one.
That's a strange way to do an invitation.
You're invited.
Yes,
You know.
I know, it's like,
I'm not gonna tell you when or where, but you're invited.
I try to tap it up and.
I don't wanna.
No,
I have that problem.
hold it.
is Robin on Zoom too?
No, you'll see a little pop-up. It isn't.
I heard.
I was just got pretty intense. She's never lost fire until it's late. She, like myself, she's,
Rushing out last second.
yeah, in some cases.
Of course, I don't know.
It's like I didn't have to pick the exact day.
But is
You
there
remember
a-
you have the,
Is there a?
Well, is it?
Yeah,
not
like
like
this,
that.
transpo.
Yeah. Look at this.
There you go.
Transpo we're really just talking about
Right,
the 4 hours that removed from the tail.
so it's okay.
There we go. No wonder it hadn't been added to that calendar yet.
Messing.
My calendar doesn't
evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order this Lacey City Council meeting on July 7th, 2022. And if you're able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a published agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion carries. We have approved agenda. And first up on our agenda is under public recognitions and presentations. Chief Almada is going to do a recap of the 2020-2021 Police Department Awards.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for having me today. This is our opportunity to highlight our police department, and I thank you for it. We're going to go over our 2021 awards and recognitions for the police department. Let's see if I can do this right. Awesome. So I have a short video. Police Department. We have a lot of really good folks working for us. Very proud of them, and today I get to highlight some of their great work. During 2021, we did a bunch of hiring and a bunch of promotions. We brought on board our Deputy Chief, Robert Hollis, promoted Sergeant Napoleon Parker, and promoted another 6 corporals as well: Ryan Haynes, Miguel Stansberry, Al Stanford, John Mason, Alex Fichek, and Jimmy Williams. And we brought on a lot of officers as well. You'll notice some laterals from Seattle Police Department, lateral from Pierce County, lateral from the Washington State University Police Department, and a lateral from the Thurston County Sheriff's Department. And in order of how they came on board, you have Hyun Keen, Ann Stribling, Matt Berry, Lane Tittle, Sofal Hieng, Kaylin Braniff, Mariessa Rosas, Alexis Satar, Stephanie Favela, and Andrea Moore. Andrea Moore, as you know, is the Medal of Honor winner and Valor winner for state of Washington. So definitely a good one for us. And we had some retirements as well. Officer Lundquist, 26 years, retired in April of 2020. Detective Stetler, after 10 years, moved out of state, April of 2020. Chief Semko, as you know, retired after 18 months of service in April of 2020. Officer Coleman, after 20 years of service, retired in March 2021. Officer Urea, after 11 years of service, decided to separate from the department in July of 2021. Sergeant Campbell, after 27 years of service, retired August 2021 and is now the commander at the Academy of Burien for CJTC. Nice to have an inside guy up there, by the way. Officer Wenchoff, after 29 years of service, retired August 2021. Officer Miller, after 25 years, retired September 2021. He's the deputy commander at CJTC. There's a lot of Lacey presence at the Academy. Let's see. And Officer Arnold, after 24 years of service, retired October 2021, who is serving as a tactical officer at CJTC. In his retirement, it's good to have a presence at the Academy. So all told, the last 2 years, about 170 years of Lacey law enforcement experience departed the agency. So big shoes to fill. So we've been endeavoring to do that. So awards and recognitions. So our volunteers play a vital role at the Lacey Police Department. They handle most of our front counter duties. They go out in the field. They do vacation checks, traffic direction, help out at public events, a lot of public outreach. Really couldn't do it without them. We have 14 current Lacey Reserve volunteers, and all our volunteers have a peer-nominated award called the Gerald Abernathy Award, which is elected from the peer group by who they see as the epitome of the best volunteer for that year. So for the Volunteer of the Year for 2020 is Randy Young. You hear that name a lot, by the way. He works an awful lot at the front counter. It wasn't until recently that he stopped working 5 days a week as a volunteer for 8 hours a day. Yeah, as a volunteer. So he does a lot for us. He finally decided to give 1 day up and let a couple more volunteers come and take his place. But he trained them, so it's okay. And for 2020, the Chief's Award for a volunteer went to Alan DeBaxi, who has now been retired a second time and has moved to the state of Idaho. And I recognize those volunteers, both Randy this year and last year, for 2020 and 2021, for his level of service, frankly. I mean, you just can't ask more from a volunteer. Moving on, for exceptional service. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I got dueling things here. So I have notes on one, and I got the one up there. So I apologize. Thank you. So for exceptional service for 2020, for patrol, Officer Alexi Timmons, who hear that name an awful lot. For patrol, Sergeant Dave Campbell, who I mentioned retired. Investigations was Officer Jimmy Williams and Officer Justin Beltran, who work our community resource unit, or did at the time. And for investigations, evidence technician Emily Lining. So Officer Timmons, she is absolutely one of our most proactive officers. She's very detailed and thorough, and she pretty much leads in every single category that we follow for patrol enforcement and activity. She is an absolute dynamo, and she recently became a field training officer. Officer Campbell, as you know, 27 years of service, many years as a sergeant, really a troubleshooter for the agency, and really helped us with our fleet, our equipment, and just making sure that everybody in the community got the service they needed. and required. Really miss Sergeant Campbell, frankly. He was really a value add. As I told you, Jimmy and Justin, which is Jimmy Williams and Justin Beltran, they are prolific and tireless in the community. You saw their pictures an awful lot in the slideshow, doing a lot of public engagement. And remember, they were our primary lead on homeless encounters and worked on the washed out properties, getting that number from 77 campers down to just 2. So lost 75 over the course of an entire year because of their direct engagement in finding better outcomes for folks. And then Emily Lining, she is amazing. So she's a civilian that works in our evidence bureau, evidence unit, and she implemented digital electronic, it's called Evidence on Cue, which helps us track evidence in a more efficient way. She is a purge maniac. We are very good about not keeping evidence or items in our evidence bureau that we don't need to keep. She purges. That keeps our numbers low, frankly, and allows us to still be in the space that we're in, which is really tight, as you well know. I won't belabor the point, but she makes it so we can actually survive on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciate the work she does, as well as upgrading and bringing us up into the 21st century for using technology. And then for 2021, for Patrol Officer Derek Thompson, and for investigations, Sergeant Shannon Barnes. Officer Derek Thompson is an absolute innovator, hard worker, Johnny on the spot, and has really became an expert in all manners of traffic investigation, traffic enforcement, and just traffic safety. Really worked hard on baby seats, making sure they're installed properly. Worked hard, he created a phone app for all our officers to help make it easier to find which code applies, what bail amount applies, so officers aren't leafing through a piece of paper book out on a traffic stop. Really made it more efficient. So he's an amazing traffic officer for us. And finally, Sergeant Shannon Barnes. Again, she has been serving as our supervisor for our investigations unit for the last 3 years. And she has organized that unit. She has brought it up to speed. She has systemized many things we need to do. And she's a phenomenal leader for our organization. So really happy to recognize her service. Do that one. Do that one. This brings us to a Distinguished Service Medal for Sergeant Adam Sieg. Sergeant Adam Sieg has served with the Thurston County Regional SWAT Team for over 21 years, and before that at the Lacey Rapid Response Team. He's a team trainer, team leader, assistant commander. He has performed hundreds of missions for SWAT, saved a lot of lives by preventing things from getting out of control. So we want to recognize his service to that program. He completed his service to the SWAT program in 2021, and just really want to commend him and his dedication to that field. Here comes the really good ones. Life Saving Award, 2020, Al Stanford. November 21st, 2020, approximately 6 p.m., a Lacey resident accidentally shot himself in the thigh while cleaning his pistol. The victim began to lose consciousness due to severe blood loss after calling 911. Officer Stanford quickly responded to the scene and provided immediate life-saving medical aid, which included the application of a tourniquet. Responding medical personnel and hospital medical staff commented that the victim survived his wound only through the immediate actions of Corporal Al Stanford. So really big part of what we do is make sure all officers have tourniquets, know how to use them, know how to apply emergency aid, and Al certainly did save a life that day. So really appreciate his efforts in 2020. And moving on to 2021, Life Saving Award awarded to one of our newer officers, Kaylin Braniff. This is a good one. October 17, 2021, at approximately 1:15 in the morning, a traffic collision occurred in the 2900 block of Carpenter Road. The caller reported that a vehicle had struck the concrete. There we go. Had struck a wall. And the vehicle was now on fire, and there's 2 occupants trapped inside the vehicle. Officer Braniff quickly responded to the scene. He broke out the driver's side window with his baton. He then was able to unlock the door from the inside, but it would not open. Officer Braniff physically pried open the door and was able to rescue the driver. The passenger was able to also be rescued using the driver's side to exit before the vehicle was engulfed in flames. Witnesses on scene, as well as responding fire personnel, remarked that if not for the heroic and selfless actions of Officer Braniff, both the driver and the passenger would have died in the vehicle from fire. Victim of the collision later contacted Officer Braniff and expressed their gratitude for saving their lives. if you haven't met Officer Braniff, heart of gold and a crime fighter to the core. So really a great officer and just the beginning of his career. So great things ahead for him. There we go. Awards and recognition, the Chief's Award. So I'm the chief, I get to award stuff. So I try to recognize folks throughout the department for all the great work they do. A lot of it behind the scenes that you'll never see, right? But I want to make sure it gets called out and appreciated. So Lacey works in our Records Bureau, and she is an absolute selfless leader. She's trained 4 new department assistants in the Records Bureau. This basically means she was the last person standing in the Records Bureau. We hired everyone else to fill the slots, and she trained every single one of them. So brought them all on board, taught them what they needed to do. Then recently, our customer service rep went out on leave for an extended period. She stepped right up, became the leader of the unit. Really a selfless servant leader, and she's also serves on our city wellness committee, and she's always stepping forward to say, what can I do to make it better for everybody else? What else can you ask for, right? So really appreciate the work by Lacey. I kind of foreshadowed this a little bit. Our Chiefs Award went to the Community Resource Unit, Officer Jimmy Williams, Officer Justin Beltran, and DA3 Lindsey Palmer, who until now I haven't got a chance to really talk about. But this awesome trio does tremendous things in our community. As I said, all the work they did with the WSDOT agreement, with those encampments, all the homeless outreach, but also the community engagement. You saw a lot of community engagement. Despite COVID, we still found ways to engage with our community, to get out there, get our information out, give public safety information, make sure we are accessible and frankly human beings to our public so they realize that we're just members of the community that happen to be wearing a uniform, right? And Lindsay was a big part of that. And also, she got Jimmy and Justin to go where they needed to go to give the talks they needed to give. So she's really the wrangler behind the scenes, herding the cats. So I appreciate all the work she did. And finally, Chief's Award to Officer Ken Westfall. He's actually a Lacey police officer serving as a tactical officer at the academy. He's a master tactics instructor. By the way, they didn't have a master tactics instructor until he got up there and they created the title because he was so good. They wanted to elevate his status at the academy. So as a master tactics instructor, Ken Westfall is a lead instructor at the Criminal Justice Training Center. During 2021, when they were looking to recast and relook at policing reform, they went to the academy and said, we want to talk to your staff. The legislators went to this academy and said, we want to talk to your staff about the way you train officers and what they're seeing, and how do we operationalize what we're trying to do as legislators. Well, they found Ken, and they really appreciate Ken's plain speaking style, very direct, very no nonsense, and very approachable. And he was able to really explain to the legislators how important it was for officers to be able to do their job, how to do it correctly, and how to minimize the use of force. And he became the go-to person the legislators would call to get that information. So he was actually recognized by WASPIC in a letter to myself, and so I chose to give him a Chief's Commendation for his work with the legislation. And he's really had a big impact on all the policing that's occurring in our state. All right, one more. Okay, awards and recognition. This is peer recognition. These are voted, again, by their peers. So there really is no greater, I can say whatever I want on the chief, right? And, okay, it's the chief. But when your peers tell you, hey, you're doing the job right, and you're the person I want to be with on a call. So that peer recognition is really important to officers. And these next awards were voted on by their peers. These are all nominations. So first of all, I want to recognize for 2020, Detective Mike Caranto. Mike Caranto is a lead background investigator for the Lacey Police Department. You saw how many people we hired. About twice as many of those backgrounds, at least, were done by Mike. And then we have to sort through who's going to be an officer. Mike did all that. He's also a firearms instructor for our department. He works investigative cases in addition to doing background investigations. He excels at unraveling complicated cases and making them simple. He's never too busy to help out a fellow detective or an officer. He's often sought out for advice on tactics, investigative strategies, and matters involving search and seizure. So he's an amazing officer, a great detective, and he's just been appointed one of our newest SWAT officers as well to the Thurston County SWAT team. Next, I want to recognize Officer Beltran, a name you may have heard before. Officer Beltran, in the words of his new sergeant, is an absolute dynamo, and I think that's a good description. He is everywhere, all the time, doing everything. He is an amazing man with a lot of energy. He is compassionate, he's calm, he's tireless, and relentless. He works to find better outcomes for those in crisis and those experiencing homelessness. He is engaging with all ages all the ages of the residents in Lacey. He's a friend to all. He has a can-do attitude, bless you. And his can-do attitude is infectious, and he truly leads by example. He has taken the lead role in training each generation of our civilian outreach teams. Those are the mobile outreach teams. Thank you for funding that, by the way. Appreciate that. They're doing great work. And for the last several iterations of those teams, starting off with Mitch Mitchell, who started out, now the mobile outreach teams. Now we've gone through a couple generations of those. So really amazing what Justin's been able to do. Finally, Justin provides valuable insight on effectiveness of homeless policy and outreach as a key component of our success as we conduct city outreach in response to the homelessness issues throughout the city. And then finally, the Tina Griswold Inspirational Partner Award for 2021. This is named in honor of Tina Griswold, who was a Lacey officer who went on to Lakewood and unfortunately was killed and in the line of duty back in 2009. And this award signifies the officer who best embodies a cop's cop, the officer who you'd want on your call as your backup during a critical incident, the person who brings calm to chaos and order to every situation. Officer Timmons is compassionate, courageous, humble, intelligent, and thoughtful. She's a leader in her productivity, but is also in the quality of her investigations and her engagement with our community. So it's really, really an honor to honor her with this award. And so, as you've noticed, we like our dogs, right? So a lot of dogs and cats, but a lot of dogs in our slideshow. And this is our newest addition. This is Trip. He is our emotional support dog. He's in training, and he helps with our outreach with the community. He also helps officers and our personnel after a particularly hard day or hard call. They like to get Trip and get their head right and feel better. And he's been a tremendous asset as well. And Lindsay takes care of him. So it all works out really well. So with that, I'll open up to any questions, but thank you very much for letting me share the department with you.
Just like hopefully you can pass along from all of us how much we appreciate our Lacey Police Department and all the public servants that make Lacey such a wonderful place to live. And I was just having this conversation earlier today with a former police officer who has gotten out of the field because of how difficult it has been over the past several years. And having the conversation with him, I just was reminded of how lucky we are here in Lacey and how lucky we are to have such a great working relationship and with all of our officers. So those are some great awards, and just please pass along how much we appreciate them.
I will. I was on a call with chiefs and Representative Strickland this afternoon, and one of the things she said is the difference when she talks to officers, the reason why they stay in the business, why they stay engaged, is support of the electeds. So thank you so much for supporting the police department. It really makes a difference, so thank you.
Thank you. So next up on our agenda is a public comment. We did receive one written public comment, and that's been a part of the record. We didn't receive anyone who wished to speak over Zoom. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address this council on any items on the agenda? On any items? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is under proclamations, and it's the Park and Recreation Month Proclamation. We'll get started.
Whereas parks and recreation are integral parts of communities throughout this county, including Lacey, and
whereas parks and recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and
Whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And
Whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And
Whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And
Whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and
whereas Lacey, Washington recognized the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now, therefore, I, Andy Ryder, Mayor of the City of Lacey, on behalf of the Lacey City Council, do hereby proclaim July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month. And I encourage everyone to go enjoy our amazing Lacey parks. It's one of the best things we have about Lacey. And to accept this is Jen. And I know you have a little slideshow to give for a presentation. Good to see you, Jen.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members for the proclamation. I'm Jen, Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation Director, and I'm excited to share that July is Parks and Recreation Month. Let me pull my presentation up here. Can you all see this?
Yep.
All right, this month we share how we rise up for Parks and Recreation. And I'll be highlighting some of the ways that our communities are stronger, more vibrant, and more resilient because of Parks and Recreation. Since 1985, people in the U.S. have celebrated Parks and Recreation Month in July to promote building strong, vibrant, resilient communities through the power of Parks and Recreation, and to recognize more than 160,000 full-time park and recreation professionals, along with hundreds of thousands of part-time and seasonal workers and volunteers that maintain our country's local, state, and community parks. The services that park and recreation professionals provide are vital for our communities, from protecting open space and natural resources to helping fight obesity and providing activities and resources for all people. Living close to parks and other recreation facilities is consistently related to higher physical activity levels for both adults and youth. And in addition, parks provide a connection to nature, which studies demonstrate relieves stress, strengthens interpersonal relationships, and improves mental health. According to the National Recreation and Park Association's 2021 Engagement with Parks report, people place a high value on the programs and services that park and recreation agencies deliver to their local communities every day and strongly support their mission. 260 million people in the United States visited a local park or recreation facility at least once during the past year. 4 in 5 adults seek high-quality parks and recreation when choosing a place to live. 87% of people agree that parks and recreation is an important service provided by their local government. And nearly 9 in 10 people agree that it's important to fund local park and recreation agencies to ensure every member of the community has equitable access to amenities, infrastructure, and programming. Local park and recreation agencies are uniquely suited to serve as community wellness hubs, connecting all members of the community to programs and services that advance health equity, improve health outcomes, and enhance the quality of life. So we encourage everyone to take advantage of all that our local parks and programs have to offer. Please visit the website, laceyparks.org. Join our mailing list for the monthly e-newsletter, and you can do that by emailing the address you see at the very bottom of the screen there, laceyparks@ci.lacy.wa.us. And you can also watch for the latest Lacey Parks Playbook, and that's our program guide where you can find a wide array of activities such as sports, arts and dance, kids classes, swim lessons, special events, and many more things. So thank you very much again for the proclamation and your support for Park and Recreation Month.
Thank you, Jen. So Next up on our agenda is the city manager's report.
Mayor and City Council, the Honorable Mayor and City Council. So we have a number of items before you today. The first one is the 2022 Sidewalk Repair Bid Award. Ashley Smith will provide that information for you tonight.
1 second, let me share my screen. All right, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. As Council is aware, the City Council passed Resolution 1043 concerning sales and use tax to fund transportation improvement projects within the City of Lacey. Those funds are intended to include pedestrian improvements and to provide for repair of city sidewalks in conjunction with the pavement management program. So what I have before you tonight is the annual sidewalk repair portion of the TBD fund use. And city staff is recommending award of project PW number 2022-15 to Simmons & Sons of Montesano, Washington, and the amount of $461,020.00. Engineer's estimate was $410,260, and there were 4 responsive bidders included in that bid opening. There are 80 working days allotted, and work is expected to begin August 2022. To go over a few highlights of this project, the main bulk of the work includes removal of tree stumps and roots that have heaved sidewalk portions, and to replace those sidewalk areas and trees with new. There are multiple project areas included that are selected by the degree of severity, and I'm going to show you a few of those now. The first one is at Sleater Kinney in front of Civic Plaza. There's just a small portion here that, as you can see, was likely once a landscape buffer that was filled in with concrete. That'll be replaced in conjunction with the new Gold Star Memorial to be placed there.
We can't see it yet.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yes, actually, you shared the wrong window.
Apologies. My apologies. Okay, how's that?
There it goes.
There we go. Okay. So the first one is Sleater Kinney at Civic Plaza, as mentioned. You can see pictured here, the future Gold Star Memorial is to be placed there, so we'll be repairing the highlighted portion in yellow. The second area included in this bid package is at 6th Avenue Southeast at the intersection of Golf Club Place. There are just these 3 street trees identified here in the yellow highlighted portion. And then this gives an example here on the right of some of that heaved sidewalk and tree grate.
Hey, Ashley, if you can you go back one slide to the
Yes.
Civic Plaza? So just to the right of that is a time capsule that past mayor and former chief of police Nelson, his son, and the Boy Scouts did a time capsule just to the right of there. That wasn't demoed out, so a lot of people know about that, and they're worried that if for some reason the sidewalk ever got demoed, that we were to make sure that we took good care of that and didn't discard it. So it's important to a lot of people. So I just want to let people know that if they're aware of that it wasn't demoed and it's still there.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. So 6th Avenue, and then moving on to the larger sections for this year, we have Parkside Drive Southeast, and I highlighted this overview to show you the length of the project area, and then we'll look at some photos. Basically, we're talking about the western side of Parkside Drive all the way from Yelm Highway up to the roundabout. So here's a street view of what that section looks like. You can see there are a large number of street trees, and those have significantly heaved at the sidewalk along that area.
Ashley, is the plan to replace those trees with younger trees? I'm assuming we're going to have to take those out.
Yes, so city staff has already cut down the trees that were heaving the sidewalk. This contract specifically, excuse me, is to remove the root ball from the remaining stumps, dig that area out, including the heaved sidewalk portions, install proper root barrier for future trees, and then replace the sidewalk. So in the fall, actually November, December, when the nursery harvests the new trees, the city staff will return and replant at these same locations.
Is that what you think what happened there, is they didn't have the proper protective barrier around the trees?
It's likely a combination of things. The type of tree is definitely a factor as well. And I don't want to speak to parks maintenance practices, but there is an age of street trees life expectancy that they are intended to be removed and replaced depending on the species. And then lastly, the neighborhood included in this year's replacement project is the Willows Crossing Rosewood neighborhood, which is 48th Avenue, 48th Loop, and those associated side streets. The highlighted area here does not include the frontage along Mullen Road or the private roads in that development. You can see here there are significant heaved areas in this neighborhood as well, which have previously been ground down to try and extend the life as much as possible. And at this point, I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
I would move to award Lacey contract number PW 2022-15 to low bidder Simmons and Sons Contracting Incorporated from Montesano, Washington, in the amount of $461,020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Do the trees on 6th Avenue have any salvage value, or?
What do you mean by salvage value?
Like, is the tree worth something?
Yeah, would they be able to stay, or are they going to be removed and replanted?
They're already gone. All the trees in these neighborhoods have been removed at this point.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next item before council is the 2022 overlay bid award, and our public works directors can provide that information.
So good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Before I get on with that presentation, I just wanted to make you aware and congratulate Ashley Smith. She was promoted to Design Construction Manager. That's effective permanently tomorrow. She's filling the position, or backfilling the position that was vacated by Aubrey when Aubrey was promoted to city engineer. So I just wanted to congratulate Ashley, and obviously was promoted because she's done an incredible job on all work aspects since she's been here. So with that said, sharing my screen, can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right, so staff recommends award of the 2022 overlay project, which is project PW 2022-17. The low bidder was Lakeside Industries. Their low bid was $2,397,360. The engineer's estimate was $2.4 million. There were 7 bidders on the project. There's 50 working days on the project, and work scheduled to begin in August. So you'll notice that out of $2.4 million, the engineer's estimate in the bid was within $3,000. So we're feeling pretty lucky. I think we're going to head to Reno here or Las Vegas pretty quick. So yeah, that's more luck than science there. Going back, you'll see that these projects are scattered throughout the city. 3 areas in the northeast, 3 areas in the southwest. So a little more detail. One of the projects is Marvin Road, essentially from 41st northeast down to about 29th. You notice some gaps in there. Again, this is pavement preservation, grind overlay. Those areas where there are gaps are areas that the developers have, well, some more recently than others, but those portions of the road have been rebuilt and are in good enough condition that they don't require grind overlay at this time. over by Costco. So you have Costco here, Home Depot here, Marvin, Martin Way. We're gonna be doing a grind overlay on Galaxy, and then in the roundabout at Galaxy Quinault, and then Quinault over to just north of Costco. Some of the smaller areas, Royal Street is just a real short stub street. This is Slater Kinney. This is the northbound off-ramp, and Applebee's is immediately north of Royal Street. South of that, south of 37th, so this would be 37th here. And then west of College, we have Nelson Street. So this is more of a lightly traveled road, but it warrants treatment at this time. Then Campus Highlands, so up near the golf courses, here's Willamette Drive, a major arterial. And then another project down in the southeast is off of Carpenter Road here in the Arbors region. So that project was saw the price, 2.4 million. Just to let you know, asphalt prices have gone up, mostly due to inflation and other factors at this time. This table, it lists the year, the project names, the type of asphalt, the cost per ton, and the tonnage. Tonnage is obviously size of project, economy of scale influences the cost. This is probably more detailed than you care about, but there's a 58V type of oil and a 58H. And as noted down here, the 58H is used on non-arterial and collector roadways, and it's typically less expensive than the 58V, but that wasn't the case this year. It came in at $119 a ton for both types of asphalt oils. You'll see here the all-time high was down around 2018 at $127 a ton. And that year there were supply chain issues that did cause that price to go up. So as you all are, I'm sure, aware, anytime there's a disruption in the supply of crude or in the refinement, for whatever reason, say a refinery catches fire or is shut down due to hurricanes, that influences the cost of, everything from gasoline, which is kind of the first order of processing, and at the very end of the processing is asphalt oil. So anyway, prices have gone up. I just want to point out that we had another $2.2 million worth of asphalt work planned for 2022. However, we've had to delay that work, and the reason we delayed it is that portion of the work had utility work along with it, and we have supply chain issues related to ductile iron pipe. So if we had included this work with this bid, they wouldn't have the pipe until later this fall, which would push the paving season into late winter, which we don't want. So we're going to delay this work and then put it out for advertisement in October. That'll give time over the winter to procure the materials, and then they can proceed with the work this spring and be paving in desirable weather. So with that said, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Can I get a motion?
Move to award Lacey contract number PW 2022-17 to low bidder Lakeside Industries from Lacey, Washington in the amount of $2,397,360.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Scott, I just have a question for you. It's sort of on topic, I guess. When we go out for these bids, is the engineer's estimate included? Do they know the engineer's estimate when they put in these bids, or no?
We advertise a range, and it's a little above, a little below. So, but I can tell you, contractors pretty much don't care what our engineer's estimate is.
Well, I've noticed that based on some of them being nowhere close, but I was just curious if they even knew. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you
Good
bet.
question. Any other discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
When opposed, then that motion unanimously carries. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I will say that engineers estimate it's valuable for budgeting purposes, so there is care involved. So,
Well, I think this one was, almost dead on, but others have been
sure, right.
nowhere even close. It's like,
So the next item before you should say electric vehicle charging stations bid award, and Martin Hoppy will give you a 3D presentation.
Seems like I'm the one that screwed up the most, so I had to come in. So we are recommending awarding Lacey contract PW 2020 to the low bidder Elcon of Everett, Washington in the amount of $462,767. This project is a partnership with the school district to install charging stations at City Hall, the library, North Thurston Public Schools Administrative Building on College Street, and at the community center. What we're planning on doing is we have both Type 2s and Type 3 chargers. So the Type 2s, kind of any car can connect to those, and Type 3s are the fast chargers. So we have two Type 3 fast chargers, one at City Hall, one at the community center, and we have 3 Type 2s at City Hall, 1 Type 2 at the school district, 1 at the library, and one at the community center. And we did set it up so they're easily expandable, so you don't have some of the costs in the future that we had with this project. So basically that Type 1 or Type 3s are only charge 1 car at a time, and the Type 2s charge 2 at a time. So a total of 14 charging spots all the way around. This project was advertised for 4 weeks. We received 8 bids. 4 were rejected for not meeting the minimum federal requirements on the things, but we did get 4 responsive bids ranging from $462,000 to $684,000. And my estimate was $194,000. I'm sorry.
so Scott, that's what we use for budgeting, huh?
It does. You can't change it once you submit the grant. But luckily this year we could. Obviously, they're much higher than we expected, and both TRPC and especially WashDOT local programs really helped us out on this one. They covered the difference in cost between the engineer's estimate and the actual bid with the new program that they developed, because everybody's getting much higher costs. I was making calls the minute I saw the bids to other jurisdictions around, and they all told me they were getting higher bids than they expected. So WashDOT is going to give us another $268,000 to cover that difference. So city would be putting in about $150,000 to $200,000 for ineligible costs and to meet the minimum match. So that covers those costs. So I think we're in pretty good shape after that.
That's good. Can I get a motion?
I would move that we award Lacey contract number PW 2020-20 to low bidder Elcon Corporation from Everett, Washington in the amount of $462,767.47.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Just a curious question. What's the average rate the consumer pays when they plug their vehicle into these things?
You get to decide. It's completely programmable. We were going to bring in ChargePoint once they get in to start setting these things up to Transportation Committee, have that discussion.
Yeah, that's a discussion that we're going to need to have as a council. We could do it anywhere from free to do we charge a little bit for replacement costs on it, which is probably what I would recommend, so we can replace them. But that's still going to be set by this council. So it's going to go through the transportation. Market rate, it would be an option, right? I mean, it's the Transportation Committee is going to have to take a look at it, and then it'll come up to full council for discussion.
I think another question we'll be asking too is, do you charge if someone, it's not uncommon for a car to charge more than, say, the limit they need, say more than 2 hours, so if they'll leave them overnight. So you can actually charge at a higher rate as a disincentive for people not to occupy that spot more than needed. So that'd be a discussion,
Oh, the
again, a policy
idling
level
fee.
discussion.
Yeah,
Correct.
Charging for time instead of for just
Well,
wattage.
what happens is some people will plug in, especially on these lower, if it's being provided by the public, right? And a lot of times it's less expensive if you're using a public charger, and they'll just plug in and leave their car, and so then someone else doesn't have a chance to use that charging station. So they charge at what's called an idling fee. So I'm sure that's will all be discussed at the Transportation Committee. The other issue here that we had is, since we had federal dollars into purchasing these, as a requirement for using federal dollars, is it had to be made in America. And so that was an issue too, and we were able to overcome that and bring the chargers here at one time. It's like the stage 2 chargers weren't, but the stage 3s were, or what?
Yeah, when we originally, we had an electrical engineer look at this, and that was kind of the criteria, is made in America. What we found out is that the Federal Transit Authority has different Buy America requirements than the Federal Highway Administration, and they met the Federal Transit Agency's requirements, but not FHWA, so that created problems. So we had to pull the bids back, and we're going to put those in later with the city contract is what we agreed to.
Okay, that's good. Good reminder there. Is there any other discussion? Then it's been moved and seconded to award this contract to the low bidder. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Then that motion unanimously carries.
Thank you.
So the last item before council is an MOU with the state of Washington related or called the Rights of Way Initiative. This is really an extension of the discussion that council had on June 23rd. Although it has my name by the item, I'm going to hand this over to Rick Walk, our Community and Economic Development Director.
Thank you, Scott, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. And as our City Manager has mentioned, this is what's before you tonight is a memorandum of understanding to implement the State of Washington Rights of Way Initiative. And as we discussed at the previous work session on June 23rd, the State of Washington has issued a directive to 3 state agencies, Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, and State Patrol, to move forward with addressing houseless individuals in the I-5 or state's right-of-way. And then as part of that initiative is to also try to make contact and provide housing options to those individuals. In order to implement that, they're looking at starting out with this memorandum of understanding to kind of create a framework amongst the various partners. There are 7 entities that are associated with this memorandum of understanding, which includes, as I mentioned before, Department of Commerce, the State Department of Transportation, State Patrol, Thurston County, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, and the City of Lacey. And it's really to try to establish a regional approach to this issue. And again, as I mentioned, is to try to relocate individuals out of state right away into various types or suitable shelter options at the local level. This MOU really establishes a framework for the strategy and identifies different actions that could be taken under this umbrella, which includes contracting, the state contracting with Thurston County to provide outreach services, identifying and prioritizing at least 24 shelter beds at local shelters that would be paid for by the state in terms of operation and cost. Expansion of existing hotel leasing vouchers. These are existing programs that place individuals that are fleeing domestic violence into hotel stays, to expand that for the individuals that are in that condition that are currently staying in the state right away. Then also establishing a tiny village of 50 units or up to 50 units, and then looking at acquisition of hotels in Thurston, or a hotel or 2 in Thurston County that would be used for transitional or permanent supportive housing, so starting to create that continuum of care. Also, this MOU identifies some of the state agency responsibilities to this, which Department of Commerce would be a funding entity for this implementation of this strategy. And then also the support from Department of Transportation and State Patrol for camp cleanup, enforcement of future trespass laws, those type of entities. Once these encampments are relocated or individuals are relocated to suitable housing options, then enforcing the cleanup and trespass on that right-of-way to maintain that it stays clear with this effort. So again, this is somewhat of a first step in a process that will also set the stage for a specific proposal that we will submit. The Thurston County partners, the county, Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey, will submit a proposal to the State Department of Commerce of what we expect for cost estimates to implement these strategies. Then Department of Commerce will identify the funds and the total award amount for be used at the local level. Once that established, then we'll come back to council to start looking at any actions that are specific to the city of Lacey and look at developing specific agreements or contracts with the state as well as local partners to implement those actions accordingly. So again, this is setting the stage to allow the opportunity to utilize state funds and resources to initiate some of our local initiatives, and that we will come back for specific contracts and brief council when those come, once we understand what that funding looks like and how we can implement some of those strategies. And so with that is a recommendation that the council authorize the city manager to sign the right-of-ways initiative memorandum of understanding that provides an opportunity to partner with the state of Washington to provide housing resources and to address homelessness in the Thurston region. And I'll be happy to respond to any questions that the council may have.
I would move to authorize city manager to sign the Rights of Way Initiative Memorandum of Understanding that provides an opportunity to partner with the state of Washington for housing resources to address homelessness.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
So, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rick. This does not commit us, the city, to any monetary amounts or any expenditures, but that won't come before council first, correct?
This specific memorandum of understanding will not. Once the proposal is submitted to the state by, the deadline is July 21 to respond to the request for proposals, and the state will, based on that proposal, will identify what type of funding they'll provide to the Thurston region, and then we'll look at that and say, okay, that's the time where we decide where we are able to commit to a project that makes sense both financially as well as meets our expectations for operations.
Excellent, thank you. And I would just add one comment. You know, I would say it's about time that the state stepped up on this. We've been talking about this for several years now, and the reality is this can't be done without the state's involvement. So it's a really good thing that the state's finally going to get involved here locally on this.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, I just really want to appreciate Rick's work on this and all the other work he's put into the Regional Housing Council, serving on the tech team. I mean, he has put in countless hours, and he's kind of become the godfather of this work. I think you engendered a lot of respect from the other communities in the county. They look to you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? I agree with Councilmember Greenstein. This is long overdue. We actually, reached out to the governor's office and asked for help several years ago, and so it's really nice to see that state stepping up and finding considerably better circumstances for these individuals. I guess the one question I have is this will this be the right of way along I-5 in all of Thurston County, or are you going to have to go back and identify areas where this is going to be? I mean, because what we don't want is just to move people around in the right-of-ways.
Right.
And that's a great question, because there are priority areas. So the first action, the state has identified specific locations in the I-5 corridor through Thurston County that they are looking to address first, and those locations are currently within the city of Olympia's jurisdiction. But the intent of this agreement is, once those are done, that's part of the conversations we are having as a region with Commerce and State Patrol and DOT, is those actions we don't want to see then push to other locations. And so that's where the ongoing commitment to ensure that we have the ability to enforce these provisions along the entire corridor. And one of the nice things that's starting to come out of this too is we're looking at the agreements the city of Lacey currently has with Department of Transportation and Enterprise Services as a template to set up for this particular locations that are currently in Olympia, but also the entire stretch of the corridor. So that is a concern at the jurisdictional level. And of course, it's going to be a little bit different than our existing agreements because of different circumstances, but the framework's going to be fairly much the same.
Great.
Let me just add, let me add one item too. I think an important outcome of this whole discussion regionally is the fact that Washington State Patrol is at least now part of the solution set. That was absent, as Chief would know. I mean, we have taken on a pretty big responsibility of policing state rights away. And so having them part of this discussion, having them part of the solution, really important. So I think, again, to, you know, Rick's comments and to applaud all the work that's been done so far, it's important they're at the table actually trying to address this issue. So obviously it's going to take a while, as we know, but hopefully we have the right players and we're actually working toward a long-term solution.
Deputy Mayor, do you have some?
Just real quick, in Councilmember Green, both of you guys are right. It's long overdue, and we've waited for this for a long time. We petitioned for it forever, and the state has finally all of a sudden said, "Yeah, we're in. We're going to help you." I like the fact that the State Patrol resources. I won't say they're going to be at our disposal, but you know, as we have this seat at the table and decide how we're going to, you know, how homelessness is going to look in this county, in all of our different jurisdictions. Hopefully, we get kind of you know, an all-encompassing view or some common thread of how we want to deal. But I'm happy to see that we will have access to like State Patrol, maybe, you know, and state funds to help us with this, because we've been asking for what feels like forever.
So it looks like September, or what is the time frame? What do we expect that this will be implemented and we can get these individuals in a better conditions?
Well, that's part of the proposal that we're putting together to go back to the state. The MOU addresses and references September or as soon as possible thereafter. That's part of the discussions we've had. Is we know that we can't put all the resources, even with the funding, in place by September. So in our conversations with Commerce, we asked that there be some leeway. So part of that proposal is going to identify timelines that we can bring on. Of course, the shelter beds can be done immediately, and then the provisions for a 50-unit tiny home village with Olympia. That's, you know, the agreements are getting in place for that, and then it's the matter of the looking at potential hotel acquisitions or other type of acquisitions to produce the transition or permanent supportive housing. That's going to take some time. So there's some framework in there for us to work within that, and we're expecting that if we can show a plan and a timeline that's realistic, that's incrementally addressing the problem, that will be acceptable to the state. Also, I do want to mention as well, some actions have already been taken under this premise as well. With 2 weeks ago, I believe, was they started work with encampment located at the interchange of Lily Road, and that was up to 3 individuals, so it's a very small camp. But that was a start to try to, as a way to, how do you get the logistics together and go through that process? And I think it was fairly successful from the report out and debrief from that effort. So again, these things are going concurrently, and then of course we have timeline to work on the bigger ticket items to be able to, 1, make sure they make sense, 2, we have the actual funding package together, and 3, to bring it online.
Great.
Did we iron out the July 21st timeline
I was
thing?
just talking to the city manager about this earlier.
Yeah, there's been so many conversations going on. There's been so many dates. I guess I would remove any concern about previous dates. I think the real date is the July 21st date, which is, do we have a proposal that's suitable to the state, almost like an RFP process that will go through its own sort of, is it acceptable to the state? Does that make sense? And then at some point we got to get back to council if we have a suitable project.
The June 30th was for a different pot of money.
Yeah, again, I'm not quite sure what the reference was, but for this process, it's irrelevant.
The only time I was aware of an end of June timeline was when the state first approached us with their timeline for completion of this project, and they identified the end of June. With this memorandum and this RFP that was just issued by the state a week and a half ago for a July 21st deadline, that is the right-of-way the funds that are identified as prior, to be allocated for this right-of-way initiative. And it's a combination of 3 pots of funds. And so that is the only deadline that we've been aware of for a funding request.
So if that's the case, then are we expecting to see you back here because the 21st is a Thursday? Are we?
Well, so this
expecting-
MOU is going to allow them to work it out, and then they're going to submit it, and they'll come back to us
And
later.
that proposal will be under the umbrella or the direction of this MOU with those pieces. And then it's a matter about putting the timing and the cost that we see that would be needed. And it may exceed what the state's already identified as the Thurston County's allocation of funds. But we're putting in the full cost so that there may be an opportunity to get other funds allocated to it or other priority counties. There's 5 counties, Thurston, Pierce, Snohomish, and King, and Spokane. If they don't have a proposal or can't use all the money, then we can probably get other funds that are allocated for other regions. But we want to make sure we're showing the full cost, and then we'll get back what the Commerce will identify as our final allocation, and then we'll figure out what we can do with that money within the context of this MOU.
Awesome.
Is there any other discussion? And it's been moved and seconded to authorize the city manager to sign this right-of-way initiative MOU. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. And with that, we will go on to standing general committees. And first up is the Finance and Economic Development Committee from back in May. And I'll turn this over to the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, back in May, on the 24th, the Finance Committee met that morning at 8:30. Our Finance Director, Troy Wu, presented our 2021 year-end financial report. And as of December 2021, the total general fund expenditures were at 84.1% of the adopted 2021 budget. As of December 31st, the general fund reserves were at 93.7%, or $56,584,886. Our next agenda item was the first quarter financial report. So first quarter report was better than previous years. So as of March 31st, 22, our general fund expenditures were $10.5 million, or 16.9% of the adopted budget, which was a decrease. The overall 2022 decrease primarily due to one-time 2021 Veteran Services Hub Building and U.S. Veteran Affairs Center Improvement expenditures. The first quarter expenditure category showed variances from previous years. And as of March 31st, 22, our total general fund revenues were 13.2, or 20% of the total budget for the first quarter of the year. The first quarter operating expenses were consistent with the projections, and so the wastewater utility, the maintenance and operations fund expenditures were actually 4.3% lower in 2022. And that is my report. Well, there was actually a bond reimbursement resolution.
I think, did we go over that in a council meeting? Yeah, I think we went over.
Did we cover that?
Yeah, we already took cover of that.
Okay, well then that is my report.
And next up is the Community Relations and Public Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. They met on June 6th at 11 p.m. It's a 3-item agenda. First with July 3rd fireworks. Sue Falish, Recreation Manager, advised the city of Lacey's 4th of July 3rd fireworks spectaculars back at Rainier Vista with live music, food trucks, kids inflatables, and characters. It was sponsored by Twin Star Credit Union, Interstate Battery and Capital, and Development South Sound Center. The event was made popular. There had been 20-something vendors. I mean, the Parks and Rec staff did an amazing job as usual. I don't know how many people, I don't know if there's a report on how many people attended, but I know it looked just as much as the 15,000 people that were there a couple years ago. So Day camps and playground pals were also highlighted, as well as various youth sports. Then the last agenda item was the Juneteenth event and flag. Shannon Kelly Fong, Assistant City Manager, presented the upcoming Juneteenth celebration event and the history on it. The Commission on Equity received a community request regarding the Juneteenth celebration and identified a collaboration opportunity with the Fred U. Harris Lodge, who hosted an existing event for the past 40 years. The event was presented by the Lodge and partners with cities of Lacey and Tumwater. It was on June 18th from 12 to 4. I drove by. I couldn't find a parking spot. It looked.
It was really great. I was able to say a few words during this Juneteenth celebration, and Congresswoman Strickland was there as well. And I just want to recognize the Fred U. Harris Lodge, who's been doing this for 40 years in our community. 40 years. It was almost like I can't believe we haven't partnered with them before now. But what an amazing event! And they gave away free food, and the line for the food was like I don't know how many people they served, but it was really great. And what an amazing partnership that we have now with our Commission on Equity and this partnership, and with Tumwater as well, because the lodge is in Tumwater. That's how they were part of all this. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Ed, who did a great flag for them. It went over very well, and it was very well received. And so thank you for that, Councilmember.
And so the Commission on Equity also made a recommendation to display the Juneteenth flag at the RAC and City Hall. And of course, we passed that, and it happened. And the representatives from the lodge, I heard the one gentleman say, "We finally made it." And that really hit home, because, especially in today's day and age, it seems like something as little as this, recognizing that we all have more things in common than we do difference. To hear that just, to me, took me back a little bit, So it was a great event, and glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
The council should be proud of it.
Yep. So next up is the Utilities Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. So our Utilities Committee met June 6th, and we had 2 items on that committee meeting. One was utility billing online payment portal demonstration. So we got a new utility billing online, and we got a little demonstration of how it works, and I was pretty impressed with it. I know I'm gonna be able to pay my bills easier with that new system. And the second item was the 2022 Stormwater Design Manual. Doug Christensen has come into a council session and gone over the Stormwater Design Manual. A lot of painstaking work putting that together, a lot of detail to that new manual. I really appreciate Doug for all his hard work. And that is my report.
And our last one is the Transportation Committee.
Thank you, sir. The Transportation Committee met on June 7th. We only had one agenda item this month, and Martin pretty much spoke about it tonight. We were able to remove 4 items from the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement District. And those 4 items are now funded and ready to go. We do have one other item that is pending a grant, which is the College Street Corridor Phase 3. But the other items that Martin spoke about tonight were removed from the TIP.
Great.
That is my report.
And now we're going to boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'm up first. The mayor's forum should have been on Friday, and for I don't know how many months in a row now, we have not had enough mayors to be able to get together to put on our mayor's forum. It's just been like a weird situation where we haven't been able to get together. And in this circumstance, it was right before the holiday weekend, and everyone was gone. And so we didn't have a mayor's forum. We have only actually had a couple of them this year, which has been really quite strange. But so I do not have a report. How about you, Deputy Mayor?
I do, and I will report first on the Economic Development Council. We met out in Tenino this month so every month we meet at a different location, and we try to choose a location of, a young budding business or somebody who needs attention or somebody who's done something new in acquisition. We met at the Armory, which the City of Olympia purchased. We've met in the craft brewing building down there in Tumwater, and most recently we met in the Tenino in a meeting space that was just recently developed by a young couple getting into business there. The agenda items, one of them, the first one was the mayor of Tenino spoke and talked about a lot of the things that are happening in the city of Tenino, the increased revenue. They're really trying to develop an agricultural park, which is one of the overarching themes of the EDC. And one of the things that really came out of the pandemic is that we're severely dependent on other people's supply chains for any and all of our agricultural needs. But the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of that stuff right here in the state of Washington. We do a lot of that stuff here, but we outsource a lot of it, a lot of the processing part of it, to other different parts of the West Coast. So one of the things that the EDC has been trying to put together is a way that we can depend on ourselves and create our own supply chain so that we don't necessarily always have to reach outside to different areas to process our goods and services. So that's an item that we pretty much talk about every month, and the development of that. One of the other things that we cover is, what are the trends in the area for hiring and employment, and are we back on track? We take a look at a lot of different heat maps and a lot of different GDP charts and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is we are back on track, and we have been seeing the kinds of numbers that we saw pre-pandemic. A lot of people like to say that the Northwest was the first in and the last out of the GDP in terms of the pandemic. And while some of that may be true, we've bounced back in ways that even greater than before the pandemic. So our numbers are up pretty much across the board. Our public administration numbers are up partly because we're in Thurston County and we have a lot of civic employment here because we're at the state capitol. But our other numbers are up as well, including real estate and healthcare. And so our consumer demand has, just like a lot of other places, has remained steady in that supply chains have not been awesome. So we have had, demand at some of the higher levels. And so people are spending as much as they ever have. Our employment is back up. In fact, over the last 20 years, we're as high as we've ever been in employment, which, very positive news there. And our unemployment rate is back down to pre-COVID levels. So we, as a county, are looking fairly strong. And I also went to the TRPC meeting on Friday, July 1st.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Vasquez wasn't able to make it, so I stood in for her. So TRPC is looking for a planning manager. They created this new position, and this person will supervise and oversee and mentor the planning staff. This is expected to be filled by September of this year. The hiring information is on their website. They are actively seeking candidates. I know that candidates can be hard to find right now in some cases, and they are not the only entity out there looking, but they do have the hiring information on their website. Our next agenda item was what the Nisqually tribe is doing in creating an open access network. So if you haven't heard about this, the Nisqually tribe has taken on the task of trying to fill in the rural areas that don't have adequate internet by building a network to do that. I think this became evident during the pandemic in that, rural kids were just not able to get their schoolwork done because they didn't have the kind of internet that was needed for them to do that. So a lot of them would go to the libraries, they would camp out in places where there was adequate internet, and it just kind of exacerbated, showed this bigger problem that we maybe we knew we had, maybe we didn't know we had. But the tribe has taken on the task of, filling in that infrastructure. To date, they have been awarded 11.5 million. They have 51 million pending in grant applications. So the funding from Nisqually to Rochester, there are several ILAs in place. And they have been doing this kind of work through also some parts of Pierce County. And the basic premise is we just want to get the unserved and the underserved areas the infrastructure that they need for an open access network, which apparently, better pricing is bound to come out of that, is the real goal. They've been sending people door to door to do surveys to find out, who's got what. And there's actually people who can't, even do a speed test because they just don't have it. But if you are in that area, you can go to nisquallyspeedtest.com to say, hey, I live in that area and don't have adequate, and here's the kind of speeds that I have available here. Let's see here. That is my report for that.
Okay. Then I'll go on to Councilmember Cox.
Alrighty, thank you. The Climate Action Steering Committee met on June the 27th. The lion's share of the meeting was devoted to putting together a citizen advisory work group. There were some concerns that not enough attention had been placed on diversity and equity and inclusion. So we went round and round and round about it and finally landed on a compromise where there were a number of candidates that the staff had put forward, and they recommended keeping 2 or 3 seats open. So we decided to go ahead and appoint the recommended appointees, but to serve for 1 year instead of 3-year terms, just for this first year, and let staff work on perfecting, if you will, the REI approach, and then move on to 3-year terms with the next appointments. People who made it on for this time around would not necessarily lose their seats, but we just didn't want to let the perfect get in the way of the good, and we feel the need to get that rolling. So that was that. And then we also agreed to send a letter to the Department of Natural Resources regarding logging legacy forests. You probably saw there was deep concern about some logging that was going to be done around Summit Lake. Because this came up and I hadn't had a chance to address you all, I abstained on the vote on that because I wasn't quite sure how our council would feel about it. But the county commissioners had sent a letter in last month, I believe it was, to DNR, and I think this letter was going to be very similar in content. So that is climate action. Lot, let's see, met on June the 8th, and took another look at this proposed 2-year project to offer a 50% discount for sewer connection fees to try to help with affordable and low housing projects. Another interesting thing is this apprentice utilization policy of lots. It was enacted in 2008 and requires uses of apprentices for 10% of labor. And it applies to projects of $2 million or more. There's been, they want to continue with the program and they're very supportive of the program, but they're trying to simplify the process to make it easier for contractors to engage on it. We got to look at the preliminary 2023, 2024 budget and capital improvements plan. There's, it's pretty standard for key capital projects that sound really appetizing, like digester system improvements. Important, though. Sludge thickener, concentrate building rehabilitation, and more. And then, what do we got left? Regional Housing Council. So I think there have been 2 meetings since I last reported out. At the June 22nd, well, let's see, the June 8th meeting, the bulk of that meeting was devoted to how we move forward with governance and staffing. And since, that's been moving along, there were key questions to be considered in this, like, 1, will the Housing Council become a separate organization like LOT or the King County Homelessness Authority? 2, how will funding work to address both homeless prevention and expansion of affordable housing options? 3, will the Housing Council create a refreshed strategic plan that's inclusive of affordable housing and prevention? And then, let's see, I guess those are the key questions. So there's a lot of meat there to chew on, but those are the considerations going into governance. Hoping we're going to get a look at that before long. Rick, is there anything you want to add on that? I know you've worked hard on it.
No, that, other than that, as a technical team, we're working on developing a plan for that governance, and then also a plan for developing policy and priority and what that engagement process associated with that is with the local service providers as well as jurisdictions. Before we can bring that fully back to the Regional Housing Council, we do need to go out and talk with some stakeholders like the Housing Action Team, the managers and administrators to get their input, and then be able to put an informed proposal back before the Regional Housing Council. One thing I do want to just mention is that it will take some time. This has been a priority. We've been trying to work on it, but also the same staff that's working on this, we're also working on the right-of-way initiatives and other aspects that keep popping up. So, but we will be getting a proposal back to the Regional Housing Council for consideration. And if that also includes having to amend the interlocal agreement, then of course it'll come back to the full elected bodies of the partner jurisdictions.
Okey doke. Thank you very much. The July 22nd meeting, most of that meeting was given over to an overview of what they call scattered site case management by the Olympia Mutual Aid Partners. This was a 1-year pilot program. They served 15 encampments, about 250 people, and of those, 31 have successfully moved into some form of more stable housing, and all had case management, which they said is critical in this. Well, we've already heard this. The technical team is working on the right-of-way supportive services for those being swept. And I guess the important thing to say about that is that the state and all the entities here are working really hard to make sure that as people are being, as these camps are being broken up, that people have a place to go, safe place, and they aren't just pushed out. So hopefully that will happen. And that is my report.
I have a quick question about lot and the hookup fees reduction. The city of Lacey obviously is helping out a lot within our urban growth area with a major septic to sewer conversion. Did lot then waive their fees, or did we get some of that, the benefit from that program for that project?
I'm not sure.
We did for Cap City.
I know we did for Cap City, but I'm talking about the $1 million that we just did for the septic sewer and Woodland.
For the Tanga Wild. Yeah, I'm not sure if we did or not.
Tommy.
I would defer to,
Tony Stick.
Yeah. We know.
I would defer to Scott Ager, who would.
Yeah, Scott.
There you go.
Yeah, so the refund will be applied for, so that project will receive the same benefit as Cap City did.
Okay, so good.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Next up is Councilmember Greenstein.
Thank you. So I have one report tonight, which is Medic One Emergency Medical Services, which met on June 15th. We had a full agenda, but I'm really only going to talk about one issue because I think it's only one that's going to be important to anyone here. The big topic of discussion was Olympia putting AMR, their private ambulance service, on notice to improve services within the next 60 days or possibly lose their contract with Olympia. This affects the entire Medic One system here in Thurston County because we count on the private ambulances to do all of our BLS transport, which is basic life support. Our paramedics, the Medic One vehicles, only transport those who are in much more serious condition. So that's advanced life support. Those are paramedics, as opposed to the ambulances, which are typically EMTs. Olympia is working on a program to field 2 units of their own. So they are looking to actually put in service 2 aid units. These aid units would operate in Olympia as the ambulance, as the BLS ambulance. So Lacey Fire District 3 has aid units as well. The big difference in the proposal and how it works is in Lacey Fire District, they only transport patients when Olympic Ambulance and AMR are unavailable. They only do it in a last resort, and they do not charge for the transport. In Olympia, the plan is for them to be the first source of transport rather than using private, and they do intend to charge for the transport. So there's a lot more to go through and work out on this, so it's going to take several months and possibly even into next year, but it's critical that we keep an eye on it because it could have a serious impact on the entire medical transport system in Thurston County because there's a serious fear that AMR would either would not have the ability or the reason to stay in this county and could actually leave, and leaving us with a bit of a hole in our private ambulance service, having only one other serious, company in there that does that. So I'll update as the situation warrants, but I did want to make everyone aware of that.
Question. What's the deficiency that they're so concerned about that they're threatening to terminate the contract?
It has to do with time. It has to do with how long it's taking them to get to calls. And we're also going through at the same time a 60-day trial, or actually a 90-day trial, where they're going to change how they do the call outs. The way it's done right now is when someone calls 911, we automatically, along with fire and or paramedics, we also dispatch BLS automatically. The problem with that is they make a lot of those calls where they then don't transport. Keep in mind, they're private companies. So when they go on these calls that they don't transport, they don't get paid. So it's becoming a cost burden that way. The AMR is the primary service for Olympia, and Olympic is the primary service here for Lacey. And we're not having those issues. We've gotten good service, very good service. And the 60-day test period, I guess you can call it, will be to see if AMR can do a better job to meet what Olympia doesn't feel is necessarily living up to what they would like to see.
I really got the impression talking to Olympia that they're going to go forward with their service. So
I think that's absolutely clear that they are. And again, I don't want to speak for Olympia or speak for or against what they're doing, but I think there was some definite clarity that they're going forward. I don't know that how AMR does in these 60 days will affect whether Olympia goes forward.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that for now.
I would agree with that sentiment for sure. Okay, Councilmember Stedman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick update on Community Action Council. I'll keep it brief. In the past year, we've been over many audits, both internal from the county, and then also now an outside independent audit, which has come back with no findings. I'm not going to get into any more details other than that and let that rest. But I did want to take a moment, and I hope it's okay, but I'm going to put this cover on here. We lost a great Marine and American this year. So Herschel Woody Williams, I had the pleasure of meeting him, learned about the monuments. Little story about him was, he was in the Battle of Iwo Jima. He had a 4-person fire team, which he served with, and 2 of them lost their lives protecting him during that battle. The whole Greatest Generation, the whole, Pacific Theater, European theater, Fight for Freedom, all that stuff. He wanted to make sure that those 2 Marines, those 2 Americans who paid the ultimate sacrifice, were never forgotten. And not just them, but any American serving their country and paying the ultimate sacrifice. They wanted not just them to be always remembered, but their families to be recognized and honored. And, I commend this council as a whole because we've all supported his vision and his dream of having Gold Star memorials throughout the country. Myself and Ed Kunkel here serve on that board, and we do it very proudly. But, Herschel passed away just, days before his 100th birthday. And, he was just a great guy. He was the epitome of selfless service, sacrificing for a great cause greater than yourself, And so I want to recognize him, and I want to try to do him justice because we need more Herschels in the world. And so with a heavy heart, God bless you, Herschel, Semper Fi, and, God bless America. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Kunkel.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have reports on every committee, starting with JazzCom. Our group met for the JazzCom retreat on the 29th of June. We covered the highlights of how we're moving with our 5-year strategic plan for sustainability, expansion, and accessibility. For our director's report, JazzCom received a grant from the Dulciani Halloran Foundation. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly, but we did receive a grant, $55,000. Most of the funds will be used to finish the medical suite upgrade, and we'll also be getting new dental equipment for the vets there. JazzCom also recently partnered with the Best Friends Animal Society to help create a community cat program. And there was a great deal of discussion about cats. I've learned a few things. How to identify cats who have been treated by the animal shelter and the slight conflicts of regional ordinances that govern the impounds and enforcement. There are slight differences between Thurston County ordinance and city ordinances when it comes to how the shelter handles stray or community cats. In the future, we will likely see a proposed amendment to local ordinances to help streamline our regional efforts for impounding, spaying, and neutering cats that may be considered strays or community cats. There should be more to follow on that proposed amendment later this year. And you may all remember the plumbing issue that they had at the shelter that was being worked on earlier this year. And unfortunately, the issue has not been resolved. So there is a plan to look at it again in November when their busy season is behind them. And last but not least, we have a new animal and veterinary care manager that will be joining Jazz later this month, and her name is Liz McQueen. For the Lacey Chamber, our chamber is hosting the South Sound Barbecue Fest this Saturday at Huntermere Park. We have lots of vendors and contestants for the barbecue competition, and yours truly will have the pleasure of being one of the judges in the competition. Looking forward to that. VCB board met Tuesday, June 21st. Some of the highlights of the meeting, we're beginning to see the fruits of our strategy focus as we move from recovery to economic growth focus. Our April scorecard is showing an uptick in volatility as more local tourism is increasing with higher hotel occupancy rates. Experience Olympia and Beyond has also rolled out a new and improved website with better analytics, to help us track unique visits and their origins. And with the anticipated launch of the state-sponsored TREAD app, we will be able to more effectively promote specific opportunities for tourism and see where the real draws are happening. And we're also presented with our updated bylaws. For Solid Waste Advisory Committee, we met yesterday, June 6th. For new business, we received an update on the potential South County transfer station. The focus is now on public engagement with a virtual public meeting happening later this month. Waste Management will be participating in public events with booths and information to garner more of the public feedback as possible and bringing the most ideal service and location in a transfer station for South County. Additionally, we had a presentation on the climate change mitigation plan from TRPC. Department of Ecology had a small update expressing the need for public input on a new cloud-based library available on the DOE website with documents and articles pertaining to waste reduction. And our solid waste manager updated us on postponement of the waste characterization study that I reported on previously due to an uptick in waste disposal over the past few months. They've been very busy down there at the landfill, and apparently that made the study more cumbersome to complete. And that is my report.
Well, thank you. Councilmember Vasquez.
Couple of quick reports. For Intercity Transit, or the Transit Authority, we met last night. And much of the meeting was spent reviewing the vision, mission, and goals for the organization, including the policy statements. A lot of it wasn't substantially changed from 2022, or 2021, just reaffirming our continuous plan to work toward 100% accessibility for people with mobility challenges or disabilities and the services that are provided, working in partnership with stakeholders to make sure that there are high-quality, equitable services being provided and that they continue to be an award-winning and respected transit system. We really have a transit system we could be proud of. The other two things that came up during the meeting are that we have some buses on back order because, like everything, there are delays in being able to get equipment and resources. So we've got 28 some vehicles that we're waiting on because of the supply chain problems that everyone's experiencing. And in a different area of resourcing, they have 41 COVID cases in the last month, so they continue to struggle with having buses fully staffed. We really have high goals for the amount of service that we want to be able to provide and the number of riders that keep having to be out because of COVID exposure, COVID cases is really high. So they're struggling with that because there's so much we want to do, but we don't have the people to do that. For Orca, we met at the beginning of June, and there was a continued discussion about recreational burning versus survival burning, an issue I think I brought to the council previously. The takeaway was that Orca intends to do a lot more stakeholdering with local jurisdictions, the cities, the county, the fire districts, to figure out what the right policy path forward is on that. Orca can choose to emphasize or sort of de-emphasize enforcement of citations for violations, but I think most of the folks on the board agree that we don't want to not enforce rules that are on the books, so we're looking at potential rulemaking changes in the future. So stay tuned for more updates.
Robin?
Yeah.
I would just say, in talking to some of the fire commissioners and some of the meetings that I attend, they're very concerned, so they definitely would like to be in the loop on those conversations.
Yep.
Because they're definitely concerned with it.
Yeah, we've been having ongoing conversations with Lacey Fire District 3, and they brought this to our attention, and, you know, I actually had an incident right in my business, outside my business, and it was a really kind of scary situation where the building could have easily caught on fire, and it emphasized this situation even more. So I know that, you know, the chief's been involved in this, and we're trying to figure out a better path forward. Because especially here in summer, I mean, a lot of these areas are areas that have
Tinder boxes.
Tinder boxes, and it's really scary. So we're working on it. It's nice. Orca is obviously the enforcement agency, so having them get the rule and work with the jurisdictions, and the fire departments and our police departments as well, because there's like who enforces, so it's all these things going together. It's really important. So I appreciate the work you're doing there.
Yeah, I had a meeting scheduled with the head of ORCA next week to talk more about this, and I know that he's engaging with Chief Brooks from Lacey Fire as well.
Okay, well, that means we've reached the end of our agenda, but before I close out this meeting, I want to give a quick shout out to Capital Development Center. We know them better as South Sound Center, company that owns South Sound Center. They, of course, were another or sponsor for our 3rd of July fireworks show. So obviously we couldn't have done this without them, and so a big shout out to them for that. And also, I just was given notice today that they just gave the largest contribution to the Lacey Community Foundation, and which is supporting our efforts here in the city of Lacey to build out our museum and cultural center, and eventually help us with our parks and other community building projects within the city of Lacey, and they've given the largest contribution now of anyone else. And so thank you, CDC, for that. It's really appreciative, and thank you for them being a great community partner. So with that, we have reached our end of our agenda. So without objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned, and as always, you keep it classy, Lacey.